Welcome, everybody. Hope you had a great weekend. What did I do? You know, the sun goes down so early these days. It's just depressing. Actually, I made some beautiful milanesa, my native Argentina's certainly not national dish, but a top dish for sure. And I'm fully on oven baked. You know, the reality is if your oven has an air fry feature, you just don't need to deep fry it, which I'm sure Robert F. Kennedy Jr. would be pleased about, assuming it's beef tallow. But, you know, that's a whole other story. We'll get back to that later. Listen, last week I did a story called This Trump Stooges Plan Could Mean Civil War. And that story received 500,000 views on YouTube and another 250,000 on Facebook. It generated a lot of interest, is the point. And I didn't really expect the reaction that the story received. And a few people did react kind of unthinkingly by saying, oh, David, Trump wins and now suddenly you're the one talking about a civil war. Except, of course, this is nothing like the right-wingers who for 10 years have been predicting civil war. None of us on the left were talking about civil war before Donald Trump's first term. This was super specific. This was, here's a policy proposed by Stephen Miller, Trump's deputy policy guy. If he gets his way, if the deportation plan is carried out the way Stephen Miller describes, it could generate a situation tantamount or equivalent to civil war. And the number of follow-up questions were stunning. Has something like this ever been done before? Red state armies invading blue states. What forms of resistance might we be able to employ against such a fiasco? How is right-wing media likely to cover such an event? So let's get real. What would happen if these MAGA red state armies of weaponized National Guards marched into blue states and started rounding up immigrants, but also beating back resistance as blue state mayors and blue city mayors and blue state governors have said there would be? Now, I am not talking about some Call of Duty fantasy. I am keeping this very specific to what Stephen Miller said his plan would entail. And as a reminder, the plan from Stephen Miller for Trump's deportation force is that red state armies made up of National Guard units from states with MAGA governors would invade blue states, create chaos, generate disorder, all under a pretext for carrying out law enforcement and deportation in blue states against the will of the blue state governors. And that's a critical aspect to this. So the first question is whether there is precedent for such a disaster. Well, in the 1960s, federal troops were sent to southern states to enforce desegregation. They were protecting rights. What Stephen Miller wants to do is trample rights in the name of Trump's deportation obsession. And even then, those deployments in the 60s to protect rights still generated a whole bunch of backlash, protests, riots, I mean, you name it. We can also look at the Kent State shootings in 1970, where National Guard troops were called in to manage protests, and that also led to disaster and multiple students being shot dead. So imagine that, but now with partisan red state troops enforcing laws in blue states. The potential for violence is enormous. The second question is, okay, we got the precedent part out of the way. Would that even be legal? I've mentioned before the Posse Comitatus Act, which says that the military cannot be used for domestic law enforcement. That's federal law. What the Trump plan on deportation would do is weaponize the National Guard, essentially sidestepping the law. States control their own National Guard troops unless they are activated by the federal government. And if you force red state National Guards into blue states without the consent of the governors of those blue states, it would almost certainly be unconstitutional. Law and order, right? Blue state governors would immediately file lawsuits if this was done. It would create months of years of legal chaos, but who knows what they can get away with while the legal challenges are taking place. It would almost certainly become violent. This isn't me advocating for violence. I'm against violence. It's being realistic. And that gets us to part three. What happens on the ground? the protests will get ugly. I mean, how do you think it will go with red state troops patrolling San Francisco or New York City? Local citizens will start to protest, but you will have armed troops from different states attempting to do crowd control. It's like taking a match and throwing it into a fireworks factory. Think tear gas, think injuries, think mass arrests. But then the sort of craziest part is that then local law enforcement will resist. The mayor of New York City will tell NYPD, resist the Pennsylvania National Guard now attempting to patrol our streets to round up immigrants. That is a recipe for complete and total disaster. And that's probably the goal. I mentioned this last week in the story. The chaos that this will generate will be used to justify even more federal crackdowns. Well, we've got to do the curfews. We've got to send more troops, maybe even martial law, because that's exactly what they want to generate. The final question is, how will right-wing media cover such an event? They should come out against it as unconstitutional. Realistically, they will cheer it and they will say this is necessary enforcement because we've got to get the criminal illegals out, and these blue state governors are getting in our way. You'll see the TikTok videos of troops on city streets going viral, or, on X or whatever. It'll explode with partisan takes, and it will be a complete and total disaster. So please share this clip, spread awareness of the plan. We're not speculating. It's in black and white from Stephen Miller's plan. And let me know, info@davidpakman.com, what do you think is the most dystopian part of this entire thing? I want to tell you about an important part of my morning routine. AG1, one of our sponsors. Before I have my cappuccino, I put just 1 scoop of AG1 in a glass of water. Every morning, I get my vitamins, my minerals, my pre and probiotics, and more, just filling the nutritional gaps, supporting my gut. AG1 contains prebiotics, probiotics, and gut-supporting ingredients just to support digestion, reduce bloating. In a recent research study, AG1 was shown to double the healthy bacteria in the gut. These healthy bacteria work together, break down food, and alleviate bloating, promote digestive regularity, aid in digestive comfort long term. AG1 is made with bioavailable ingredients that work with your body. And what good is a supplement if your body can't absorb and use it? AG1's powder form makes it easy for your body to digest and access the nutrient-dense ingredients in the formula. So this holiday season, try AG1 for yourself, or even give it as a gift to someone special. All November, AG1 has a Black Friday offer. With your first subscription, you'll get a free gift as well as a welcome kit and a year's supply of vitamin D3 and K2. Go to drinkag1.com/Pacman. The link is in the description.